A new poll from North Carolina Policy Watch states that North Carolina voters are skeptical, among other things, of efforts to exempt charter schools from oversight. Rob Schofield from NC Policy Watch joins us right now. First off, let's get this out of the way. This poll was conducted by Public Policy Polling, correct?
That's right. They're one of the most respected firms in the country.
True. And who was asked?
About 700 registered voters in North Carolina during the latter part of March.
Okay. All of it really dealing with education. According to the polling, I'm reading here, voters think that charter schools receiving public funding should be required to provide free and reduced lunch, should be required to hire certified teachers, and should be required to provide transportation. What does this tell you?
Well, I think in general it tells us that people are comfortable with charter schools. They don't have a problem with them, but they want them to be the sort of laboratories of innovation that they were originally set up to be. They don't want to set up a competing school system. So if they're going to be laboratories of innovation, they got to abide by some of the basic rules that traditional public schools abide by, so we can actually maybe replicate some of the things that they are able to accomplish.
It doesn't state here if this was one of the questions, but do you think it gives an indication that voters are supportive or not with regard to doing away with the ceiling on charter schools?
Well, I think there's in general comfort with charters. I think the notion that we would bump up the ceiling slightly probably would not trouble voters. I think the message also that's conveyed in this poll, though, is that people are not comfortable with simply turning charters loose and having an unlimited number of them and letting them abide by whatever rules they want. They want certified teachers. They want them to provide free and reduced price lunches. They want them to be governed by the State Board of Education. They don't want it to be a free-for-all.
Okay. Something that did surprise me to a degree. The poll showed that substantial opposition to taxpayer-funded vouchers for parents who wish to send their children to private or religious schools. I would have thought the numbers would have been more in the favor of that. We're showing 56% opposed, 39% in favor.
That's actually not, that's about what we would have expected, and that's relatively consistent with what we've seen in North Carolina over the years. North Carolinians have not generally been for creating a parallel public. They generally like our public school system. They're not for dismantling it or sending everybody off to private schools.
Yeah, 66% at the same time, I guess in line with what you were just saying, broad support for traditional public schools, including, as I said, the 66% for maintaining tax revenue at current levels to avoid cuts in public education.
Yeah, I mean, the situation we're facing right now is that the General Assembly is literally proposing to cut taxes at a time that that revenues are at a all-time low, and they are for generally keeping taxes where they are so that we don't have to lay off teachers. And, 3-to-1 margin.
Yeah, and there's also here support 55% for maintaining Smart Start and more at 4.
Same thing.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know, probably this didn't come out in there, I'd be interested to know if people would be willing to pay more in taxes to keep these cuts.
You know, there actually have been polls as early or as recently as last fall that indicated that voters would actually consider paying a higher sales tax, although that probably wouldn't be the most progressive way to do it, if they could be assured that that money would go to reducing class size or keeping our public schools from having to cut essential personnel. I think that in general, voters like our public schools. They want to keep them strong.
Okay, Rob, give us your website one more time.
www.ncpolicywatch.com.
Okay, Rob, much appreciated time. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Rob.